this is the homework for tonight. It's on sort of getting started with simplifying algebraic expressions. What we're going to be doing is talking about something called algebra blocks, and I have some of them here. You can see these. These would be the x's, and if you look here, let me zoom in just a little bit. Like the negative x has the dots in the picture, so that's how when you're drawing a picture, you put like dots and that shows negative. The positive x is just right here. With the blocks, whenever I use these, like what do you guys think? Which one would be, which color do we usually use for negative? Red. So that would be a negative. That would be a positive x. And we use the blocks because we really don't know, like for the chips, like these are like the chips here. We know that's a positive one, that's a negative one, just like we did before. For the chips, we know that this is 1 unit. We know exactly how much it is. But if it says x, do I know how much that is?
No.
No, that's an unknown. X could be anything. I don't have a clue what it is. So these are different things. These are x's, positive x, positive 1, negative 1. Now I do have actually blocks for this, but I figured since we've been using chips, I would just bring in the chips. So let's go over this real quick. So here I have 1, 2, how many negatives do I have? 5. How many positives? 4. So if you remember from when we did integers, what happens when you have a negative one and a positive one together? What is that called? A zero pair. And a 0 doesn't change the number when we add it on, so we get rid of all our zeros. Negative 1 plus 1 makes 0, cross it out. What's left?
-1.
So that's the answer. Now you didn't have to do anything to that on your homework because it's already done. I just wanted to show it to you. Let's move it on to number 2. What the point of this is it's the same thing. It's if you have a positive x and then you have a negative x, well, if you have any number and then you add its opposite, what do you always get?
The biggest numbers.
Watch. Any number plus its opposite. 100. What's the opposite of 100?
-100.
What do you get?
0.
So any number plus its opposite equals what?
0.
0. So this right here is also a 0 pair. Even though it's x's, we can still get rid of it. How many x's do we have left?
1.
So we have 1 x, and then what else?
4.
4 units. So this would equal, if you have 2 x's plus a negative x plus 4 integer units, that's going to equal just 1x plus 4 because we get rid of our 0 pair, just like we did with integer chips. Now, notice this is a positive x. This is 4 units. Can I put those two things together?
Yes.
Do I know what x is?
No.
No.
No, you don't.
I don't have a clue what x is, so I can't add x here with these ones because I don't know what x is. I really have to just keep them separate and say the answer is x plus 4. If one has an x and one doesn't, we can't add them together since we don't know what this x actually is. Caden?
Would it be the same like if it was the other way around, if it was negative and then positive in the middle? Would it be like the same?
Yes. Yep. Only it would be a negative x is your answer. All right, moving on here. With the x's, how many zeros do I have with the x's? 2. So I cross those out. Do I have any 0 pairs with the units? No, because there are no positives. So let's look. First, let's write out the model. We have how many negative x's?
2.
So we have 2 negative x's. How many positive x's?
1.
Well, all together before I crossed out.
3.
1, 2, 3. Plus negative what?
X.
2. And when I cross out the 0 pairs, how many x's were left?
1.
So we have 1x and how many units?
2.
So plus a negative 2. Or you could just say x minus 2. That's the same thing.
So we put that as 1.
Yes, that's what you'd write in that spot. Any questions about that? Matilda?
How did you get the first expression?
This one?
Yeah.
Let's go to this, and I'll do that first and see if it makes more sense. Because I should have done it that way to begin with, and I didn't think to do it until we're done. So here's how we get that. How many negative x's?
4.
4. So we have 4 negative x's. Negative 4x. What that means is if you say 4 times that, you'll get that. So negative 4 times, that would be negative 4x. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. How many positive x's?
2.
So plus 2 positive x's. We have any 0 pairs?
2.
What's left?
2 minus negative 2.
2 negative.
You have 2 negative x's. Negative 2 x's.
So that's right.
Yeah.
No.
Moving on.
I'm
All right. So let's do it in a different order just to show you it's the same thing. I've been leading off with my negatives. You could just as easily lead off with your positives. How many positive x's?
1.
1. How many negative x's?
2.
2. So you have a choice here. You could put plus negative 2x, or you just could put minus 2x. It's the same thing. It's up to you. How many units do I have?
2.
2. Are they positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative. So I'm going to put minus 2. You could also put plus a negative 2. It's the same thing. Questions?
That's right.
Well, we got to simplify it. Remember, you always get rid of 0 pairs. Do I have any 0 pairs with the
Yes,
x's?
1.
Right here, right? What's left with the x's?
Negative
1. Negative 1 and 2.
And then minus 2. That would be the simplest form. So basically what we're doing is we're putting our x's together because they're what we're going to learn is called like terms. We're putting our units together. And we can't do anything else since we don't know what x is.
Why would you subtract the x from the 2?
Say that again?
Why would you subtract the x from the 2?
Well, because x could be any. And what he asked was, why don't we just subtract the x minus 2? X could be anything. X could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100, a million. X could be negative 5. X could be anything. I don't have a clue what x is at this point. And since there's not an equal sign, I'll never know what x is. So unless someone comes and tells me, like let's say someone came, don't write this down on your homework, don't write this down, but let's say someone said x equals 5. Then could I put this in and say, oh, all right, negative 5 minus 2, could I do that?
Yes.
I could do that. But I can't do anything else unless I actually know what x is. Because x is what we call an unknown. It's a variable. It could be anything. That's the reason you can't put them together. It's just like this. Here's a negative x. Until I know how many of these this is, I can't do anything else. This is as simple as I can make it.
Then why would you subtract?
What?
Why would you subtract?
What do you mean, why would you subtract?
There's a subtraction sign.
Oh, why is this subtraction?
Mm-hmm.
Good question. You could, if you wanted to, you could do it this way instead, since there are 2 negatives, and that would be the same thing. Because remember, you would add the opposite. I just like the way it looks at negative x minus 2 more, but these are both the same thing.
So you could put any sign like addition or subtraction?
You could put addition as long as you know that those are negatives. You could put minus 2 or plus a negative 2, and that's the same thing. Gracie?
Okay, so my teacher last year, she told me, and maybe this is with a different expression.
Okay.
I don't know, but she told me that with bigger problems with variables, like if it has equal to certain like x with a number like 5x equals like 13 or something, which is probably not right, but like
Okay.
she said you would divide it by 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right now we're not doing things with equal signs yet. We're just talking about simplifying. We're going to get to what you're talking about too.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Caden?
What? It says negative x plus 2. Why do you put numbers there, like negative 1 plus 2? Like plus negative 1 plus 2.
Because we don't know what x is yet.
Oh,
Now,
you gotta solve it.
now some problems will come back and tell you, oh, x is 5, and then you know what to put in.
So you put negative 5?
Yeah, and
Additionally?
yeah, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but eventually you'll be doing word problems, and in those word problems you won't know something, and so until you find out what it is, you put in an x. That's what we use x for. It doesn't make as much sense here because we haven't done it in real life. This is very what we call abstract at this point. But we're going to.
Negative x plus 2.
It's negative x plus negative 2, or negative x minus 2. It's the same thing. All All right, so let's talk about this one. I always like to put the x's first, but you could put the numbers first. How many negatives do I have with the numbers?
3,
So -3. How many positives?
2,
Plus 2. All right, how many
1, -1,
how many negative x's do I have?
2,
So -2 x's. How many positive x's?
3.
And remember, instead of doing plus and negative, you could just say -2x. It's the same thing. So let's cross out our 0 pairs. There's 1, 2. How many do I have left with the units? -1. 0 pairs. You see what I did there? 2 0 pairs. What's left? Plus
-1.
just 1x. So -1 plus x. And I don't have to put there's 1x. We just know that there's 1x. If you put x, that means there's 1. Any questions about that? To the back? I don't know when the recording is going to run out, but hopefully we have another minute or two before it does. So let's do this one. This one does not have a model, so we're just going to do the models real quick. So we have an x. Then how many units?
15 minutes until it comes.
Yeah, it gives 15 minutes. 1, 2, 3. How many units? Is that right? X plus 6?
Yes.
Okay. So what we got to do is think of ways that we can write this where whenever we cross out our 0 pairs, it equals this. So, for example, what if I added that? If I took away my 0x, would it equal x plus 6? So one way to do it is, how many positives did I put out there? How many positive x's?
Oh,
1,
2.
2.
Oh, wait.
So 2x. How many negative x's?
1.
So minus 1x. How many units?
1.
Now if I take away my 0 pairs, will it equal x plus 6? If I take away the 0 pair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this would simplify to equal that. That's what you're trying to get.
Oh,
Adam?
So we make our own now?
So,
Mhm.
I still don't get why would you subtract?
Oh, I can.
Right here?
Yeah.
So let me show you. I'm adding a positive x and a negative x, so I get 2 positives. You got that?
Mm-hmm.
So when we add a negative x, there's really 2 ways to do it. One is to just add a negative x. Does that make sense?
No.
We just put 1 negative x into the problem. We're taking it and adding it into our problem.
Okay.
Another way to think of that is instead of adding a negative x, what adding a negative really does is it actually just subtracts. So this is 2 ways to write the same thing.
Oh, okay.
All right, it says write 2 ways to do it. So here's the original problem. Let's come up with one other way to do this. If I end early, just for the people watching at home, if I end early, just do through what I got done, and we'll work on the rest when we get to class, because this may cut off at any moment. Just go through what I got done and then stop.
Alright, so we can do.
All right, so we have 1x plus 6 is what we want. What if I added a 0 pair with numbers? As long as I'm adding 0, does it change this original problem? If I just add 0?
No.
So could I add that?
Yes.
Yeah, let's look and see what this would be. How many x's do I have?
1.
So we have 1x. How many positives?
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Well, actually, no, I added an extra one.
Yeah.
So plus 7, and then how many negatives?
1.
1. So I could put minus 1 or plus a, what would it be?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. And then when I get rid of my 0 pair, do I have the original expression there?
Can't see the oh.
X plus 6, yeah.
Didn't you say that if it was a negative or a positive x, I think I heard you say this, Sissy, that you could just say it was like -1 or positive 1?
For the x, no. You could, all right, if it's just, let me show, I know what you mean. Watch. If all you see is x, x isn't 1, but it means that there's just 1x. So there'd be a 1 in front of it. But if you ever just see a negative x, you know that it's a negative 1x. Because if there's 1 of something, we don't have to put it. You know that if you see it, there's 1 of it. All right, let's, just to make sure I get a little bit of everything done.